Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Vincent Price.
When I was young, my favorite stories were of Mideastern origin. I thrilled to the tales of magic carpets, minarets, and lovely dark-eyed princesses peeking from behind veils. As I grew older and learned more of their history, my imagination was stirred by armies of fierce warriors on white Arabian horses stampeding over the deserts. They fought fiercely, and empires rose and fell. Slaves were bought and sold, and often the only changes were the occupants of the palaces in the royal cities. Life went on. The carpets were still woven, children born, caravans plied their ways from Egypt northward. The texture of life remained remarkably the same. Even the foods remained the same. The names changed from country to country, but the basic foods remained. Eggplants appeared in a variety of forms. Chicken and lamb were, and still are, the staple meats. Nuts, particularly almonds, walnuts, and pistachios, figured heavily. The citrus fruits were a main source of vitamins and minerals. And pilaf, that delectable mixture of wheat noodles, rice, and spices, remained. Grape leaves were stuffed with delicious mixtures, and if they were unavailable, well, cabbage leaves substituted quite nicely. As I said, I feel the cuisine is so ancient, so deeply rooted in the mists of time, that it is virtually changeless. Old habits and customs remain. The leaders, music, clothes, and myriads of other things pass, but olive trees still bear olives, fields still grow eggplants and cucumbers, and, well, the food remains the same. Eggplants come in many shapes and colors. There are finger-shaped purple ones and large white ones, and our most familiar large purple eggplants. An eggplant should feel heavy for its size and be a beautiful deep shade of purple and very shiny. If your eggplant meets all of these criteria, you have a good one. Now, most people fall into one of two categories. They either think of eggplant as a main course, or the others prefer not to think of eggplant at all. Well, shame on you. I adore eggplant. It's a delightfully sensual vegetable. It absorbs and blends with any numbers of spices and seasonings. A rather unusual but delicious appetizer is called eggplant caviar. It's a mixture of chopped peeled eggplant, tomatoes, onions, green pepper, garlic, and herbs, lightly seasoned with olive oil and lemon juice. The first thing I do is pop my eggplant in a 350-degree oven and bake it for 1 hour. While the baked eggplant cools, I chop a sweet red Bermuda onion in my blender, floating in water, turning it off and on 4 times at high speed. I also chop a green pepper and bell pepper and a clove of garlic together in the blender, allowing them to drain with the onions. I then take 2 or 3 large ripe tomatoes. When I shop for tomatoes, I always look for perfectly rounded ones. If the tomato has a large indentation at the stem, it also has a hard woody core, so I look for nicely rounded tomatoes. I peel the tomatoes, first heating them over an open flame till the skin bursts, and then they peel very easily. I then cut them in half and squeeze out the seeds and juice so that, well, we don't want them to water down our caviar, do we? No. I actually do this almost always when I use tomatoes because I want tomato flavor and not seeds and watery juice. Now that our eggplant is cool, we peel it. The lovely purple skin can sometimes be extremely bitter, so it's best to discard it. I then chop the peeled eggplant and pop it in a colander to drain off some of the excess liquid. The rest is easy. We stir together the drained chopped eggplant, chopped onions, tomatoes, peppers, and garlic, and this makes an attractive mixture of red, green, and cream-colored eggplant. I then add the juice of a whole lemon and 2 tablespoons of good olive oil. I season the caviar with salt and pepper, about a half a teaspoon of each, and then we add a small pinch of oregano and one of thyme. I think we should talk briefly about pinches. To get a large pinch, I separate my thumb and index finger. I then stick them into the box, pinch, and pull them out. To make a small pinch, I press my thumb and index finger together, place them in the spice box, and flex them together. The tiny bit that is trapped by flexing is a small pinch. So now you can confidently add your small pinch of oregano and thyme. And not only that, when people are throwing hints about cooking around, you can smile smugly because you know all about pinches. I pile my eggplant caviar into a bowl, cover it tightly, and place it in the refrigerator. The flavor should be allowed to blend for several hours before serving time. I let it warm slightly before I serve it because it's much more flavorful when it's not icy cold. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, how on earth do I serve this? Well, think of it as a dip. I like to serve it with pita bread. You know, that flat bread, envelope bread they sometimes call it. They're available in almost any supermarket today. It's also excellent with rye crackers. I generally pile the eggplant caviar on a pile of shredded lettuce and surround it with cucumbers and tomato slices. This way, my guests can make a little sandwich if they want to. I always set out a small, shallow dish of oregano and another one of thyme so that my guests can add pinches of their own, big pinches or little pinches. Most people can't resist the thought of playing with spices, so let them enjoy it. This is a lovely prelude to any meal, and I think it's especially nice with a dry white wine or a rosé. It also holds up quite nicely with beer, so enjoy it before any meal. You know, for some reason or other, this dish, as many of the desert foods, is particularly suited to hot weather. It somehow tastes cool and refreshing. I love it, and so do my guests. Salads can often be the same, so I like to serve something different if at all possible. I like dishes where everyone somehow gets to participate. A fondue somehow makes a party. It creates a mood of intimacy and draws the guests together. This is the whole idea behind entertaining, as far as I'm concerned, creating a meeting of persons that uplifts us all from our daily routine. Anything that helps create this mood is on our side. So I devised a salad using traditional Mideastern foods, but presenting them in an unusual way. I just prowl the produce section of my supermarket. I choose several fresh fruits. First, a cantaloupe. They should be heavy and the skin well nettled. And most important, I sniff the stem end, and one should smell the overpowering perfume of cantaloupe. Then large strawberries if they are in season. If you can find the huge ones with their stems attached, expensive, yes, but worth every penny of it, perhaps then a fresh pineapple. And most definitely bananas and cucumbers. Yes, my friend, cucumbers. Cucumbers are a fruit, and they combine delightfully with any other fruit. I prepare the fruits by cutting them all into bite-sized chunks, except, of course, for the strawberries. The bananas should be tossed with lemon juice so that they stay white. I always peel and seed the cucumbers because they are much more delicate that way. I then arrange the fruit on my nicest crystal platter, and I refrigerate it, tightly covered. I then make a dressing. I let 4 ounces of cream cheese reach room temperature, and then I whip it until it's light and fluffy. I then stir in 8 ounces of plain yogurt, 6 tablespoons full of honey, and a little tip of vanilla, plus a small pinch of cinnamon and another small pinch of clove. I cover this and I refrigerate it too. Now I take 3 tablespoons of sesame seeds and I mix them with 2 tablespoons of melted butter, and I toast them in the oven, scattered on a pie plate, until they are golden brown. This takes about 10 or 12 minutes. When I serve the salad, I place the crystal platter of fruit in the center of the table. I sprinkle the fruit with toasted sesame seeds, and then I give everyone a skewer and a small bowl of dressing. I also have bowls of chopped pistachio nuts, chopped almonds on the table. Everyone then stabs his choice of fruit and dips it in the dressing and then sprinkles it with the nuts. My favorite wine with this is, kind of classy, chilled champagne. It somehow brings the party to heights unreached by regular wines. I adore poultry. Chicken in particular. It's such a cooperating meat, hopping from cuisine to cuisine and fitting in as an indispensable member of each. In Spain, it's pollo. France, coq, usually au vin. Germany is Hühner, and America, southern fried. In the Mideast, chicken finds its way into many dishes. One of my favorites is chicken marinated with lemon and yogurt and glazed with honey. The preparation is very simple. I take 2 chickens cut into serving pieces and toss them into a plastic bag. I then add 8 ounces of plain yogurt, the grated rind and juice of 2 lemons, 2 teaspoons of seasoned salt, and pinches of rosemary, thyme, and oregano. I lay a garlic clove on the counter and I smash it and then I toss it in too. I then mix everything around and force out all the air, and I seal the bag and put it in the refrigerator overnight. This is very important because the flavors permeate through the meat instead of just staying on the surface. To cook the chicken, I merely bake it uncovered at 250 degrees for 3 hours. I baste it every 20 minutes or so with melted butter, and then the last 40 minutes I brush it heavily with honey every 10 minutes to create a rich glaze. Just before serving the chicken, I toss on about 1/4 of a cup of chopped nuts. Pistachios are superb, or almonds are very nice, walnuts passable, but for God's sake, no peanuts. I prefer a dry white wine or champagne with this chicken. A Chenin Blanc is very nice, or even a Chablis. If you are rushed for time and can't manage a 24-hour marinade, try shish kebab. They make a beautiful presentation and require less beforehand preparation. For 8 people, I choose 2 to 3 pounds of tender steak. I cut it into 1-inch cubes myself, and then I toss it in a bowl with a 1/2 cup of wine or beer, a minced clove of garlic, and 2 tablespoons full of meat tenderizer. I mix all these well and let them set while I prepare the vegetables. Now, I cut onions and green peppers into pieces the same size as the meat cubes, and I parboil them in water for 2 or 3 minutes. I then drain them and thread them on the skewers with the meat. I add mushrooms and cherry tomatoes too. Have the charcoal ready, or if you must, the broiler preheated. I then cook these for about 6 to 8 minutes, turning them often, basting them with a melted butter until they are done. I like mine on the rare side. Now, the flavor of the onions and the bell peppers permeate the meat, and the tenderizer seals it and keeps it juicy. When I serve these, I always flame them at the table. I just warm 3 to 5 tablespoons full of brandy in a tiny silver saucepan. Then I light a long-stemmed match and pour the brandy near the flame, igniting it. The dining room should be darkened so your guests can feast their eyes on this shish kebab nestled on a platter of pilaf crowned in blue flames. A heavenly Zinfandel complements the shish kebabs. Its raspberry and forest overtones play rhapsodies with the meat and the rice. Doesn't that sound good? Pilaf is a wondrous Mideastern delight. It can be flavored with different broths and garnished with any numbers of nuts or fruits or vegetables. It goes beautifully with the yogurt chicken, and it makes a lovely base for the shish kebab. I like to let my pilafs bake because one less thing happening on the top of the stove before a dinner party is on heaven's side. So I first chop an onion and a garlic clove in the blender. I then melt a cube of butter in a heavy pot with a lid and brown a cup and a half of converted rice and 1/4 of a cup of finely broken up spaghetti or vermicelli in it. When the rice and noodles are delicately browned, and you must stir constantly, blend in the onion and garlic, which have, of course, been drained. I then add 3 1/4 cups of boiling liquid, chicken stock, beef stock, canned or fine, or perhaps wine or beer, or in a real pinch, water. Bring everything to a boil, pop the lid on, and stick it into a 350-degree oven for an hour. When it is done, garnish it with raisins or currants or chopped nuts. This is an exciting dish because it elevates the rice with the flavored liquids and garnishes. It's really quite nice enough to eat by itself, but it does complement most meats extraordinarily well. Try it with a roast or a steak some night. Divine. Mideastern pastries are a divine concoction of phyllo pastry, honey, and nuts. They are all even more complex than I wish to tackle. So for dessert, I would advise you looking up a Mideastern bakery in the phone book and buy your dessert there. I would recommend baklava as a starter and then ask the baker's advice. Please don't even think about the calories because they are astronomical. The coffee, however, can be made at home. Now, I usually brew a pot with double the amount of coffee I would use just ordinarily, and then I serve it in a demi-tasse cup, suggesting that my guests sweeten it heavily in the Turkish style. I try then to serve a selection of liqueurs to complement the coffee. Some of the favorites are anisette or ouzo, coffee-flavored brandy, triple sec, curacao. There are dozens of other ones. Try them all. It's great fun. They make the perfect ending to a lovely meal, a veritable magic carpet ride all by themselves.